Off.
Yeah, and they're going.
Here we go. Second Blitz game. What are we seeing?
Second Blitz game, and Mamedyarov is trying to basically copy what he did 2 games ago when he managed to get that key win in the rapid portion. Foreest has gone for something different, and actually there's been a quick trade of pawns, a quick trade of knights early on. This is a variation of what we call the Grunfeld defense. That's been a theme of today, actually. It's the fianchetto variation. If you look at white's light squared bishop, black's light squared bishop, they're both parked on really long diagonals. That being said, black is supposed to be doing quite okay in this variation. I've played it my whole career with white and with black. This knight move, and okay, we will see a trade of pawns in the centre now, most likely. Black's king can also castle. This has a very drawish reputation, I've got to say, this opening, this variation at least. Until this last move by Mamedyarov, pushing a pawn forward and sacrificing. Jordan, you saw the reaction on his face there. Allowing this move is not supposed to be ideal for black.
So maybe he's thrown a little bit. I mean, like, this is an ideal move for white to play if white can get away with it, because you gain space in the centre that you can build an attack around. So, yeah, I just feel Jordan's a bit thrown at the moment.
Yeah, he doesn't look comfortable, Jordan. OK, we did see a trade of knights there as well, so no more knight forks, no more knight checks. All of the knights have left the board. Actually, in Blitz, that's really useful. You don't want to walk into any knight forks. Knights are so tricky to handle in short time controls. That being said, white has extra space in the position. White's pawn in the centre of the board, far more advanced than any of black's pawns. And white has that extra central pawn. White's going to throw everything forward in the middle.
It's kind of a Mamedyarov position. We've just seen him grind down a beautiful positional game, but he really is in his element when he's coming forwards towards his opponent's king. And at some point, you can see the pawns near white's king can just move forwards and start steamrolling up the board, you know, space invading.
Yeah. You'll have to make that sound happen more later, Simon. If
It
the
sounded
pawns
like
push
the
forward.
countdown theme tune.
I did. Yeah.
Anyway.
That's my singing for the day. Done. So, yeah.
Well done.
Well, if it happens on the board.
Yeah, well, OK, I'll do it again
Yes,
if it
thank
happens.
you.
So.
Yeah.
So that's why Jordan, he's just stopped now. He's frozen for 30 seconds, more than 30 seconds. He's nearly 2 minutes down on the clock already, Jordan, because he's scared of those white pawns in the centre just marching forward. That's where white has the pawn majority. Black is stuck for a plan. The evaluation bar already hating black's position.
Wow.
Yeah, I have to say, I really despise black's position as well, because, you know, like you guys said, you know, white has free hand in just pushing those pawns in the centre. Also, you know, there's not that much things that black can do to challenge these pawns. And lastly, I think it's going to be so easy for white to trade off dark squared bishops and make the right side extra vulnerable.
He just needs to move. He's been thinking for over a minute on one move, and it's not even a critical position. There's no threat in the position. There's nothing he needs to react to, nothing he needs to calculate. He's just frozen. OK, he hates his position, but you need to move.
But I think he can see what's coming, isn't he? And that's the problem. He just can't find a plan. I mean, whatever you play, you can make your position worse, even if you move the E-pawn. I mean, we could show that, maybe just highlight it very quickly. But let's say black tries to do something against the centre by moving the E-pawn. OK, he's done something else, but we can show this. Well, white can at least move the C-pawn. And if you have an exchange in the centre of the board, you've given your opponent a passed pawn. So, you know, whatever you do, it could just get worse. So he's gone for something drastic, and I can totally understand why he's done this.
And just to show, this is white's plan, pushing all the pawns forward in the centre later. We're going to see something very similar. Jordan trying to chip away at the pawns from the side, but I think Shaq might just ignore this and start pushing his own pawns at some point. You can maybe just get greedy and take a pawn. It's a matter of taste here for Shaq, but we will see. He can take a pawn here and maybe just get greedy with the white rook. This is a pawn advantage. He can put that in the bank for later, or he can just stay consistent and start pushing.
I have to say that I like what Jordan's done there. At least he's unbalancing a very bad position, and Shaq has grabbed that pawn. But, you know, Jordan's got a pass pawn himself now, so worth doing this, I feel.
Yeah, I think it is a good roll of the dice from Jordan, because, like you say, you know, activated his pieces. Therefore, you know, this actually makes life much more difficult for Shakira, because he has to handle his opponent's activity. I personally would never have taken that.
Let's forget about general terms, though, because, yes, white's a pawn up, but this is the move instantly I would play in Blitz without thinking. I think you too, Simon. He's played it. He's given up a rook for this powerful black bishop. Look at the black bishop on this diagonal. He's given it up, but now look at the black king. So many holes around it. Once the white bishop comes to this square, the white queen, it's also going to jump in with checkmate. This looks terrible for Jordan. I'm surprised the computer's not enthused at all by White's decision, but to me, in human terms, it looks great for White.
I think Black's got to try to get the queens off here. I mean, if you don't get the queens off, you're probably going to get checkmated. So can you get away by, playing this move, David, and trying to chase the queen wherever it goes, basically, because at least you've got the rook behind it, swap the queens off, try to get some defence going. This is, I mean, I don't know if this works. You might be able to capture, push the pawn in the centre at some point, but this looks like
keep the queens on, keep the queens on, go for an attack. Just to point out, so Black here does have a rook for White's bishop and 2 pawns, so it's actually...
Oh my God!
No. What's happened here, Ivanka?
He's taken the pawn. I mean, it has to be a blunder because the bishop will just come out, threaten checkmate. Once the pawn moves, I mean, there's like so many things that kind of appeal, like pushing the pawn forward.
Black had to block this, and as you guys mentioned, very minimum you can take this rook, and White has 1 pawn for free. But also you could think about pushing this pawn forward, threatening a check, hitting the king, hitting the rook. This one looks game over. You can maybe move the queen forward first, hitting the rook.
I like that move, David, attacking the rook, getting ready to push the pawn. Everything seems horrible. Jordan's going to be kicking himself if he loses this one. Shaq's got enough. He's got 4 minutes as well, so he did this before. Take a little bit of time just to try and work out what the best move is. Horrible opening for Jordan, so he was thrown. This move also looks logical.
Maybe it wasn't as good as actually attacking the rook, but it was very beautiful. So who can resist that?
I mean, there might be some drawing chances here because there's not many pawns left, right? If there's another exchange of pawns, you know, it's you get to an ending, you can draw that one.
Yeah, you're right there. Suddenly it's much less clear. I think he had a clear win, Shaq, and also he had 2 extra minutes on the clock, but he didn't stop. So both players struggling with the pace of the game. Shaq still 1 pawn up, big favourite now, but Jordan, pieces of pawns are getting traded, disappearing. He's got some drawing chances. Yeah. He needs a miracle, just like the miracle Shaq pulled in the last game.
All right, well, if he wins this, Shaq will gain 2 points and will be on the same score. But winning this match will be in front of Jordan on the standings in the tournament. And yesterday, Jordan won against Magnus, maybe losing the match against Shaq today. And tomorrow, Shaq will play Magnus Carlsen. Everyone's winning against everyone here.
Yeah, everyone's really strong.
Yeah, that's the thing. And actually, I kind of like what Jordan's done. I mean, he's got a defensive setup. He's going to have to defend for a long time, but he's suddenly got some solid feeling to his position. I know it's a pawn down. I know it's a bit horrible, but, you know, you're defending everything. So it's not as bad as it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, if the queens come off, you really fancy Black's chances to draw this game. The one downside for Black is that the Black king is still a bit airy, a bit loose, open there. And, OK, just a few more moves. But I think that's what Jordan should aim for, a queen trade. I think White wants to keep the queens on the board to attack later. And, OK, meanwhile, no progress. And also the change in momentum, White is still dominant, but no direct attack. It's all about a slow build-up now. That could be in Black's favour.
And I have to say, I do like Shaq's last move, you know, just advancing the bishop by 1 square, advancing the king 1 square. No, it's nice to bring the pieces slowly forward. Slow and steady does win the race in these types of positions.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan's got a good defensive position, though. He's brought his bishop back to cover anything around his king, so it's just whether Shaq can break through. And I think at some point Shaq will have to take a little bit of risk by advancing a pawn to break through. But you know, so it's not easy to break this down.
Yeah, Shaq, I just don't understand why he rushed earlier. He's still got 3 minutes on the clock. Surely his instincts would have been tingling. He must have known he was winning on the spot. But he paused, and he's gone into this position, which is very different now. It's all about whether actually Black can hold a fortress. And look at Black's pieces. The rook, bishop, and king just huddled together. He's just curling up into a ball now, Jordan, and he's saying, "Okay, you can't break me. There's no holes in my armor." But it feels like somehow...
I'm going to go draw. I think he's going to hold this one. Here it comes.
Armageddon chess.
We haven't seen it yet. Why not? Let's see it, you know. And I think Jordan's looking a bit more confident now. He probably realises he was losing. He's got a bit of momentum on his side now.
I don't know. I'm going to go win.
You're going to go win?
Yeah.
David?
I'll go. I think White will win eventually. It's just too difficult to defend. And also, I'm looking at the clock times. black is not only defending, but 2 minutes down on the clock as well.
And all the experience that Shakhriyar has. He must have been in tie breaks before.
Many. Jordan, meanwhile, he's played Blitz his whole career. He's young. He's been playing online his whole life, so he's got some experience too. Okay, the Black Queen. Ooh, sneaky threat. The Black Queen threatening to come down diagonally and take one of the white pawns. And okay, that's been defended by White's rook. Going backwards though, no progress. Suddenly I'm more on Simon's side. Suddenly I think maybe a draw. It's not gone well for Shaq on the last few moves.
Yeah. No, I mean, he hasn't proved anything yet. He's got to break things open. I don't think he's going to be able to do this just with his pieces. I mean, let's look at the time as well. The time is actually against Jordan. Jordan's down to a minute, Shaq 2.5. I think if Shaq gets shorter time, this will be, you know, he could actually even go wrong because he's, I don't think he's, as David said, as quick with a mouse as Jordan is.
And also with queens and rooks on the board and clocks ticking, that must be difficult.
Yeah, and that's why Jordan actually, he's really sneaky. He's forced a rook trade there. He got the rooks off the board and the queens have gone.
The queens have come. This must be a draw, a technical draw even now, I'd say.
I don't know. These
Well,
bishop endings are very complicated.
4 versus 3.
I think if Black's pawns, if you look at Black's pawns, 2 of them are on white squares. If all of Black's pawns were on dark squares, it would be a dead draw, no chance. But because 2 of Black's pawns are on light squares, they are targets for White's bishop. So
has this helped Jordan though by swapping pieces? You'd assume the more pieces that get off, the nearer you are. But you're right; those pawns are horribly on light squares. If White can get around to attack them, and you can never exchange bishops when you're Black here. If you ever exchange bishops off the board, it's a losing king and pawn ending.
Yeah, and now you can see White King advancing up to the 4th row. That's already one little step. And now that's all that's needed is to kind of push the Black bishop off its diagonal. But I mean, it's still very tricky, I think.
It's going to be close to I mean, that word keeps coming up, fortress, right?
Yeah.
Can Black just sit and do nothing? And what is White's plan if Black does that? Does White have a winning breakthrough?
Maybe White has to exchange another pawn somehow to try and break through, but then you're getting closer and closer to the draw. And he's probably now threatening to, well, not threatening, but aiming to push the pawn in the middle of the board. And maybe he has to do this at some point.
And one thing that, he's trying to make the breakthrough now. He's using the white bishop to attack some of Black's pawns. Those Black pawns on light squares are vulnerable. Jordan needs to defend it with his bishop passive. But one thing as well that top grandmasters always look at when they have bishop endgames, they look at the colour of the corner square. And if you look on the right half of the board, harry the h-pawn on the h8 square at the top of the board, that is a dark square. So White's bishop is on a light square. So actually, if White ends up, even if he wins everything that Black has, if White ends up with a light squared bishop and that h-pawn, it's still not enough. It promotes on the wrong colour square.
I think it's a dead draw.
There
you go. I'm going to say it. Yeah, just sit here and just wait and draw. That's what's going to happen. Armageddon, midnight comes and... Oh,
this last move is a bit strange by Black, bringing the king forward. The Black king surely has to go back now. Hide on the dark squares.
Yeah.
I think the problem for White is, like you said, Simon, maybe it's just a draw. The White king can't snake the whole way around. Black's king will just block off the White king.
Maybe there's a threat, though, David. Bishop d3 now, swapping the bishops off. So we can maybe show this. The king goes back very quickly on the analysis board. We've mentioned that if White can swap the bishops off, then it could be losing. So this is why he had to move the bishop there, just to avoid the exchange of bishops. So
just to show, if the bishops come off, then White is winning. White has an extra pawn. Meanwhile, now the White king is coming.
Oh, has he blundered?
Yeah, this is huge. The king is now on the 5th row. It's going to come in.
The White king is coming, and Jordan had to give up another pawn. He's 2 pawns down suddenly. It's hopeless.
Looks like a dead draw now, doesn't it?
Well, definitely the clocks, and look, he's making moves with 1 second on the clock.
All White needs to do now is bring his bishop back, bring his king back, and challenge Black's bishop. If he can trade off the bishops, there's a lot of moves there, but if he can trade off these guys, it's just a win. It's still completely winning now for White. 2 pawns.
3 seconds.
No Armageddon. We're not going to see it.
And, OK, now he's doing it.
Yep, he's, as mentioned, he's just bringing the white bishop back, forced the black bishop to a bad square, and now the white king will reactivate itself forward. At the right time, you can create a second passed pawn, potentially.
There's probably a couple of ways to win this, actually, and now, I mean, you have to be a little bit careful. You don't want to rush it by, I was going to say, playing this move, so I'm glad I'm getting things right today.
This is the key, right? Black If black can give up the bishop for white's central pawn and hide the black king in the corner on the h8 square, it's still a draw. So some small chances. The problem is you will never see Shaq push forward the central pawn and let the black bishop give itself up. This one now, yeah, it's just winning. The black king is forced into the corner and white will push the central pawn after he's kicked away black's bishop. Ooh, is it winning?
But hang on a second, the bishop can start moving along it can redirect itself to another diagonal.
Yeah. Oh, I think this one is winning.
I'm not even going to say anymore. I think it should be winning, but it's not so simple, funnily enough.
There are stalemate ideas all the time with black's king in the corner. When you're defending, put your king in the corner at all levels, just in case your opponent's stalemate.
Oh, this one was a killer.
Wow.
Saw this one. Lovely tactic. Killer.
And 100 on the bar, and a loss. A handshake between the two fighters, and a big smile from Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. He wins